Hello, Dominic here. I'm the Festival Director of the Bournemouth Writing Festival. Looking forward to welcoming you to Bournemouth Town Centre on the 26th, 27th and 28th of April 2024. Now, during the Writing Festival, we have lots of free stuff going on. It's not just ticketed talks and workshops and walks. We've got things to inspire you to get writing. So we have a poetry hub where you can have a go at lots of different poetry activities. We have writing on the beach where you can be inspired by the sea or the sand or the sky to get you writing. And we also have some poetry happening in the Bandstand in Lower Gardens. Now, one of those things is Beth Calverley, and she is bringing along her poetry machine for Saturday and Sunday, where you can go up to her and tell her a few things about you, and she will write a poem for free just for you. Now, surrounding Beth are going to be some typewriters, and that is going to be called the Stanza Room, a qwerty type of magic. And this is going to be led by Mark Rutter and Judy Waite from the University of Winchester. Now, the Stanza Room in the Bandstand is going to be all day on Saturday and Sunday between 10 and 5, and it's completely free to come along and have a go typing away on a typewriter, whatever you would like to write. And Judy and Mark will be there on hand to help you and to guide you. Now, I'm very pleased to say that Mark and Judy are with me here today. So Dr. Mark Rutter is a senior lecturer in creative writing at the University of Winchester. He has an MA from the University of York and a PhD from the University of Southampton. He is a poet and an artist, having published artist books and illustrated broadsides. His poems have appeared in literary journals across the world, and his paintings, prints and artist books have been exhibited in the UK and USA. So, hello, Mark.
Hello, Dominic. Nice to talk to you. I am not only a poet and an artist, but I'm fascinated by typewriters. And can you see that? There's a typewriter poem for you called For Every Rivermouth Poem. This is one called Typstract Embroidery. I find messing around with typewriters very inspiring. And I rediscovered my typewriter while I was isolating with COVID in the lockdown. Oiled it, cleaned it, and to my surprise, found I started getting ideas for poems purely in terms of the typewriter, the shapes it makes, the sounds it makes.
Brilliant. So you're the perfect person to hold this event for us. His colleague Judy Waite is also a senior lecturer in creative writing at the University of Winchester and is an award-winning author who has published over 40 works of fiction, ranging from picture books to young adults. Her books have won several awards, including the English Association Best Children's Picture Book and Children's Book Federation. So welcome, Judy. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Okay, Mark, so you've given us a little bit of background as to your typewriting enthusiasm. So tell us a bit about your writing and your poetry.
I'm really interested in combining poetry and art, and also combining those two things with music, if I possibly can. That's relevant to what we're doing as well, which we'll come to later. My usual subject actually has been nature and the environment and things like that, but the typewriter and the visual poetry have taken me in a very different direction from that, including towards experimental performance. So it is very much experimental and open, and I never quite know where it's going to lead, which is why it's been so enjoyable to explore, basically. But it's still a kind of relatively new area of exploration, I would say, for me. One that's kind of taking off and building up and starting to define my work more than I expected.
Okay, great. So Judy, tell us a bit about your writing and the 40 different books you've written. I mean, don't talk about every single book.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want me to. I started as a children's writer, and I particularly started as a children's writer because at the time my children were quite small, And my writing sort of grew up with my children. So I began the writing picture books, and then as they kind of hit middle grade, I seemed to naturally just progress to middle grade myself, and then moved into young adult. But I didn't really sit in each one all the time. I would then kind of go backwards and forwards back to picture books, between picture books in young adult, or between middle grade and young adult, etc. One of the interesting things for me about this project and this being part of the Bournemouth Festival is that it actually started in Bournemouth for me many years ago, over 20 years ago, when I actually attended a writing conference in Bournemouth and met a lot of people, most of whom were very down on the idea of publishing, which is seemingly surprising for a writing festival, but about books not being read anymore on computers, even that long ago. Computers were going to take over, no one was going to read anymore. And a lady, and I can't remember her name now, I remember her first name, Marion, she actually ran an extra session because she said DC Thomson were looking for writers. And that was the first time I had heard anything about anyone looking for anything at all. So I was so excited that someone was looking. I went to this talk, and it was about how to write comic scripts and what particularly DC Thomson were looking for. So I rushed and bought some copies, various copies, and had to go and send them off. And I wrote these things on typewriters, and I got them accepted, and I would bash these little things out, and DC Thomson would buy them, and then they'd come out in sort of about 3 months' time into a comic and or a Christmas edition, an annual, whatever. And that was actually the starting point for me of my writing. So by doing the comics was quite a natural progression really into picture books, because it gave me that visual quality where you need to think about what's happening visually as well as what's actually happening in the text. And that kind of evolved into picture books, but I don't think I never planned to be a children's writer. That's just kind of how that Bournemouth event and opportunities that then came along just became what I was doing really. And I sort of have stayed around. Most of my writing tends to be contemporary, as opposed to fantasy or science fiction. I've done a few things, fantasy and science fiction, generally when I'm commissioned to do them, and I do enjoy them. But a lot of the ideas that come to me are drawn from things that are currently happening, or things that I've eavesdropped on or read about in the paper recently. Anything like that is something that might trigger me in terms of writing. So I'm quite interested in what's happening now of writing and gathering in ideas from things, the experiences that we actually have, which I guess, just to sort of end on that question, is an area that I've moved into really, which is more around the research area of writing and writing process, where ideas come from, how the unconscious mind processes ideas, how we might use that to our advantage, and that connection between who we think we are, who comes out when we actually write, and what's actually kind of going on in that dynamic between the two.
Great. So the Stanza Room is going to have some real typewriters, some old-fashioned, old-school typewriters within the Bandstand. So tell us a little bit about what you can do, what's going to happen. Judy, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what's actually going to happen, we're going to have actual physical typewriters in the room, and we will be inviting anybody who wants to come along and type a poem. There's going to be a performance element as well, which Mark's going to talk about in just a moment. But we wanted to do this because it's something that Mark and I have been sort of hatching really for probably a couple of years. Begun with some of Mark's very kind of lovely, quirky poetry that he'd actually published a book, Mark, and we were having a look at the book, and in the moment Mark was coming up with new work, and this would be so great to be done on typewriters. And I had this vision of a room full of typewriters, and of kind of it being like an installation, and a kind of sort of something conceptual, something interactive. And we went away and we kept kind of grappling with the idea, but it didn't seem to quite go anywhere about who would have this, and where would we put it, and how many typewriters, and all these practical things. And then I had a dream, and that always sounds a little bit flimsy when someone says that, but I have actually dreamed some of my novels, and I do believe that when you kind of tune in that way, your mind is kind of open and ready. And I actually dreamt that Mark went traveling on a train with a typewriter, and the typewriter that he had was very elaborate. It looked like, if you can imagine, a fairground horse that is turned into a typewriter, a carousel horse turned into a typewriter, those sorts of colors and patterns and shapes. And I was there helping, but it was Mark who had this beautiful typewriter. And fairgrounds to me are also part of creativity and creative energy. And I just contacted Mark and I said, I just dreamt about this typewriter and we've got to do it, because I dreamt of you with this beautiful, beautiful, magical, creative typewriter. So that's where it all began.
Wonderful. So, Mark, Judy just hinted to something there about a performance. So is something special that you're plotting? Is there anything you can tell us in advance?
Yeah, one thing I want to mention about dreams, strange things about these kind of visual poems and things is that I do find that of all the kind of poetry I write, they're the ones that are most likely to appear fully formed in a dream. There's something about visual poetry and dream, which I don't know what the connection is, but there certainly seems to be one. But yes, I've long had an interest in using the typewriter as a prop of some kind for a poetry performance. And as we were coming up with this idea and discussing it, I think Dominic, I think it was you who said, in fact, in an email, would you be interested, or actually, no, I think it was when we talked on Zoom, what would you think about doing some kind of performance? And I thought immediately, yes, this is a great idea. So what we're thinking about, yeah, is at least one of the days, maybe both. I'd like to do it both days. This is still at the planning stage, but what I would like to happen is that on both days, at a certain point in each day, we will do a performance using the typewriters. I know that Jason has talked about coming along possibly with a guitar to take part. You know, we have some small percussion instruments that might work with a typewriter. Robin, my wife, is also interested in taking part. And this is something we've got to practice, but the idea is to do a musical performance using the typewriter as a musical instrument. It's not without precedent. The composer Eric Satie, of whom I'm an enormous fan, is the first composer ever to use a typewriter in a piece of music. And I think when I was a kid, I'm absolutely certain I heard it when I was a kid, and it's stayed in my mind ever since. And so the idea of doing a performance of typewriters, the sheer sound of them, I think, is part of what's making them interesting to use. It's partly the spacing, the kind of even spacing, really does lend itself to visual designs, especially abstract ones. But it's also the sounds, the sounds of the keys. Each key makes a different sound against the pattern. There's the bell that rings when it reaches a certain point. You can turn it, so it's full, and the space bar is quite percussive. So it's full of musical potential. We have yet to actually practice it, but I am confident that we will definitely do some kind of typewriter performance as part of the event.
You heard it here first. The typewriter orchestra sounds amazing, and I can just imagine it's exactly you said, those keys and the bell kind of going out across the lower gardens and poetry flowing all through Bournemouth to the sea. I love that idea. So watch this space, and we will update the website and the social media once Mark and Judy have kind of brought their thoughts together on the typewriter orchestra. And it sounds it's going to be very experimental, but also very fun. And I'm sure you'll probably allow other people to get involved as well, particularly children and families.
Absolutely, yeah. The more, the merrier.
Brilliant. So keep your eye out on the website and social medias channels for that. Thank you so much, Mark and Judy, for joining us today. So that is the Stanza Room, a QWERTY type of magic. That's going to be in the Bandstand in Lower Gardens all day, 10 till 5, on both Saturday and Sunday. and it is absolutely free. It's not going to cost you a penny to take part in that. So please come along and say hello to Mark and Judy and have a go at writing a poem or any kind of writing on those typewriters. Also, you'll be next to Beth as well, so you can have a poem written especially for you by Beth, a poetry expert and professional. So thank you so much, Mark and Judy, for joining us. We shall see you at the Bournemouth Writing Festival on the 27th and 28th of April 2014. Take care of yourselves. Bye.